think right now is a good time to build or upgrade your gaming PC, and I believe there are going to be a lot of people who are curious about how the 14900K stacks up against the current gaming champion, the 7800X3D. So what I've done here is set up my initial testing for the 14900K. I have it on a ASUS Z690P Prime series with 32 gigs of Samsung BDI RAM running at 4000 CL14. That's an overall latency of 7 nanoseconds. So that is extremely fast RAM and very good for gaming. And then on the 7800X3D side, I set it up on a B650 Gigabyte DS3H. I have 32 gigs of DDR5 SK Hynix A die running at 6000 CL28, also very fast RAM. The DDR4 setup actually has lower latency. Alright, so on factory low, I had the 7800X3D getting a higher average FPS, had a slightly lower 1%, and then I've added a new metric here called CPU FPS per 10 watts, but this number can be used to numerically kind of size up the power draw difference. Now I'm only doing one run each on these tests, so Tarkov has a ton of RNG and the average FPS can vary, so really it falls in a range rather than that number really being a full representation of the performance. So going forward, I'm going to add in more iterations of the test so that you can see kind of the ballpark of numbers, but for now, just keep that in mind. And for the sake of this comparison, it basically feels the same as a user experience. Both felt very smooth, and if I didn't have the metrics on, I probably wouldn't know which one I'm playing on. And the difference in FPS is not something I'd be able to discern without on-screen metrics. So they perform about the same, but the X3D is putting out about 2.5 times more frames per 10 watts. That's the stat that continues to stick out in this comparison. Alright, on the Ultra run, I'm going to touch back on why I'm going to start doing more than one run. On the 14900K Ultra run, the AI didn't really load in until towards the end of the benchmark, and that led to very high frame rates, but once the AI loaded in, it was very close to the 7800X3D, but I wasn't recording my stats then. So this is an example of Tarkov RNG and how much performance can vary because of how much RNG exists. And even when going offline and trying to keep all parameters equal, the game isn't inherently built to randomize a lot of things. So I think longtime Tarkov players understand that. For newer players who are trying to understand the performance, just know that it's a big picture. It's not really as simple as just saying, hey, here's the average. Alright, moving on to the peer settings test. These are the settings that I would use in online gameplay, and I think this is the most accurate snapshot of the performance difference between the two in this title. There basically is no difference in performance. There is a huge difference in efficiency and cost. So I think this graph illustrates that pretty well. They look pretty even, but if you look at the CPU FPS per 10 watts, you can see a large discrepancy there. And I think that's where the 7800 X3D has such a large advantage over the 14900K, because it can do everything the powerful Intel can, but it draws less power and it's cheaper and its components are cheaper. So I mean, for 90 to 95% of people, that's going to be the better choice, both in performance and value. Those two things are usually mutually exclusive, and it's very unusual to get both of those characteristics out of a flagship product. Okay, so on streets, low, the 14900K was struggling for some reason. I don't know why it was so low in this one on low, and then on factory it was destroying on ultra. I think that the amount of AI affected it here, but then it got higher performance in ultra and pure. So I think that maybe I happened to pass by a scav gang or something. I don't know. This test and the factory ultra test on the 14900K, these feel like outliers and not very accurate to the way it actually performed. And I found there were a lot more aberrations in the low and ultra settings where I min and max things. meaning on low it should show the FPS ceiling, and on high it should show the graphics ceiling. So again, the numbers look a bit different on the average. I think that is more of an outlier, so don't pay attention to that one. In this test, the 1% low is a good representation of what I was seeing. And then obviously the CPU FPS per 10 watts, that's been consistent through every test. The 7800X3D is consistently killing it in terms of power usage. Alright, Streets Ultra. Most of you are probably gone by now, but if you're sticking with me, thanks a lot. I appreciate it. So the 7800X3D really struggled on this run. I don't know. I think that the averages would be closer together if I recorded more runs. But as I've been mentioning throughout this entire video, I only did one run on each map, and there is going to be variance in each run because of the inherent RNG in Tarkov. Now I'm going to be continuing to improve the stability of the tests so that the numbers can accurately display the performance and give you a snapshot easily. But for now, it comes with that caveat that there is some variance in the tests. Just try to keep that in mind, alright? If you watch the videos, the numbers are actually very close. And last but not least, Streets on my pure optimized settings. I think these two tests on both Streets and Factory give the most accurate snapshot of the type of performance to expect from these two chips and how they stack up against each other. As you can see, they're almost identical in performance in average FPS in 1% low. However, one is drawing a lot less power and providing a lot more CPU FPS per 10 watts. So the 7800 X3D happens to be cheaper, happens to be able to achieve max performance with pretty much any motherboard, from what's considered to be an entry level to enthusiast motherboard. Even the RAM, I've done a lot of RAM comparisons. You don't need fast RAM to get the max performance out of it for Tarkov. So it not only performs about the same, it's cheaper, the components you have to buy with it are cheaper, and it runs cooler and it draws less power. So it's a complete no-brainer. I don't see any reason that the majority of people would consider an Intel. Unless you're an enthusiast, a benchmarker, an overclocker, then there's a good reason. Otherwise, I really can't think of one. Alright, so I presented a lot of information, threw out a lot of numbers. I wouldn't blame you if you stopped paying attention somewhere in the middle. And in this section, I'm just going to bullet point my most notable observations. You'll see that the numbers vary a little bit, but basically, if we're putting it like tickets to a ball game, both of these CPUs are front seat tickets, okay? You're front row, you're in the middle of the action, you're right up front. Whether or not you get row 1 or row 2, you're still basically in the vicinity of that front row seating area, okay? Now there are different seats within this area, but overall, everyone in this specific area is getting a similar experience. And it's not like the difference between a front row seat and, let's say, a balcony seat, okay? I hope that illustration helps, because I really feel if I didn't see the metrics, I wouldn't be able to tell which system I'm on. They are both extremely high-performing gaming CPUs. You're not going to go wrong with either of them. You're going to get a good experience of the spectacle you're here to see. And while they're both going to give you the same experience, one costs a lot less, one is a lot less trouble to set up, one doesn't need as expensive complementary components, a motherboard and RAM. So my conclusion is that for 90 to 95% of gamers, the 7800 X3D, it's a no-brainer. I don't even know, I wouldn't even consider the Intel right now. For enthusiasts, benchmarkers, overclockers, it's fun to tinker around with, it performs very well, and there's a lot for us to do. I would say the majority of people are not in that category, So the majority of people, in my opinion, should be looking at the 7800X3D, and it is just an incredible piece of tech. I don't think that we'll ever see this kind of juxtaposition of value and literally best-in-class performance, because usually when companies are making products, they understand that they can charge the most if they have the best. But for some reason, AMD continues to provide us with a lot of benefit without always taking the most profit, and that's why I like to feature their products. I'm not some kind of brand loyalist or fanboy. If you look at any of my content, I'll get every single product out there, test them all, and then let them stand on the way they perform. I don't care about the label, I don't care about the name, none of that. So this is the place to get that type of information, and if you want more of that type of stuff, just make sure you stay tuned. And I pretty much put out content every day. So I'm glad to see you here. I hope it was helpful, and I will see you in the next one.